All right, good day, future Luther College students. Hope everyone's well whenever this recorded lecture is making its way into your eyes and ears. My name is Thomas Johnson. I'm a associate professor and department head of communication studies here at Luther College, and just want to take a few minutes and talk about documentary filmmaking. As part of my role here at the college, obviously I do my teaching, no doubt about that, and I'll talk about a few of my classes here in just a moment. I've got my service, and I've also got my scholarship. So in addition to writing on documentary film and writing on sport media, I produce short subject documentary films. I'll talk about those as we get a little bit further along. But I guess I bring these up because that's how we come to here, where I'm giving you a recorded lecture on documentary filmmaking. All right. I should mention there's my contact information, my email. So you might want to just take a moment and jot that down. Take a pause. I'll take a vocal pause myself. And if you have any questions after you take in this recorded lecture, please let me know. Like, I'm so happy to follow up with you via email. And then even with that, I'd be happy to follow up with you over the telephone, chat with you on my office line, and yeah, give you a good feel for what we're doing here at Luther College, because I think this is just one of many things that we are doing super well, and I couldn't be more optimistic about where we're going moving forward. We got this coronavirus thing. We'll get through that, but from then, again, I couldn't be more optimistic about where we're going moving forward. So here's where we would hear a little bit from y'all. And I've tried to frame this recorded lecture kind of similarly to how I do it when we bring folks into campus for a Creative Arts Visits Day or Scholar Recognition Day or any sort of visit day when I'm meeting with some folks. So here I'd get your preferred name, I'd get your high school, and maybe get a TV show or a film that you're digging right now. And it could be anything, and give me a feel for why. So I'm gathering that many of you are watching a number of television shows and films that maybe you wouldn't have had time for 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, whatever it might be. But yeah, a lot of good stuff to be digging into, whether we're looking at Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime, and that doesn't even count what we'd see from our big three networks, our big four, I guess, CBS, ABC, NBC, Fox. But let's stay on task here. So a few things about my background. This is my 9th year here at Luther College, and as mentioned, I'm in the Department of Communication Studies. Specifically, I teach classes in critical media studies and media production. So those are my two areas of emphases within the communication studies discipline. So we've got some analysis, but we've also got some creative production involved in what I do. And so I not only practice that, as I mentioned earlier, but also teach that. Speaking of teaching that, these are the classes that I teach here at Luther College. I often teach in our Paideia program, 111, 112, and during questions. And I think that our Paideia 111, 112, in addition to 450, is something that's so unique about our institution. Because within 111, 112, like, we dig into texts, whether we're talking about novels, plays, pieces of music, and asking some questions about what we're reading, what we're seeing, what we're hearing, what we're feeling, and trying to come to a better understanding of what they might be doing for us, okay? And I think when you're able to get into a class with 17, 18, 19 other first years and really develop that community, it's an experience that I think is fairly unparalleled to other institutions, and it's something that has brought me great joy over the course of my time here at Luther. I think I've taught in Paideia 4 or 5 times. I'll be teaching again next fall and spring, which I'm fired up about. But just as a side note, like the group that graduated here in 2019, so last May, I had them as first years, and I remember thinking about and reflecting on the great work that class did when they would come together on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday basis, and the discussions that I had from it. And I was so happy to see so many of those students during graduation and shake their hands and give them hugs. I guess that sounds a little bit odd considering we're supposed to keep our physical distance right now, but it was so great to see them kind of come full circle and to be able to connect with them in so many different ways throughout their college careers, but specifically in that first year when they were doing Paideia. A few other things. So these next 4 courses here that we see, these are all my January term classes. So I've had the good fortune of teaching numerous classes in New Zealand, communication and sport in New Zealand, but also communication and adventure recreation in New Zealand. Taught that class in 2019, so not too long ago, but definitely teaching that in the near future. And just a few months ago was teaching environmental communication in Belize And then I think it was in 2017, maybe 2018, that I taught How Soccer Explains Europe. But I take great pride in teaching these classes, along with various colleagues, ranging from Russ Schuweiler to Jeff Boki, and I think we do a nice job of presenting experiences that very much force us to be aware of our surroundings and also engage in some coursework that will push us in different intellectual ways. But yeah, it's very much experiential learning, and I think it's another great thing about this institution. These are the other courses I teach. The front one and the bottom one, these are the media production classes I teach, as we see illustrated by the names. So concepts of media production, which is a field production class, but we also do a little bit of live on tape stuff. And then on the bottom, concepts of media production 2, the documentary. So in this class, students produce short subject documentaries of between 7 and 10 minutes. And the aim is that when they finish those, that they are of broadcast quality, or of a quality that they could be submitted to film festivals and do well at student film festivals. And I could go through a whole list, and actually I'll mention them in just a touch bit here, of films that have performed well at film festivals across the nation and across the globe. So yeah, many folks who have taken these classes have gone on to do great things in various aspects of production. And I'm going to touch on that in just a moment here as well. But these are the other classes I teach in terms of critical TV studies, sport, media, and society, urban American serial television, analyzing The Wire. It's an HBO show from a little while back here. And more than likely, your parents, your guardians, your aunts and uncles, they may have watched The Wire. Many people call it the greatest television show ever made, but of course that's something to be debated, undoubtedly. And there's various things we could point to as to why a TV show is good, or why it's of value, or why it's prestige, whatever we want to be. With that said, some of those questions that I just posed are things that we talk about in critical television studies. And then lastly, I've got my class, Masculinity in Film. It looks broadly at gender, so we're not just looking at masculinity, we're also looking at femininity, we're looking at sex, we're looking at gender, but there's a specific focus on masculinity. A question that always comes forth from students when they come in and chat with me is this. So what do students that graduate with a major in communication studies do exactly? And we might add to this to visual communication, because that's another one of our majors, minors here at Luther College. Many folks right now, they will major in communication studies and minor in visual communication, or vice versa. Particularly some of the classes that I teach, and also my colleague Derek Sweet, have a bit of, they function in both universes. Let's just put it that way, for lack of a better phrasing. But yeah, if you get a chance, go onto our website and you'll get a feel for communication studies, you get a feel for visual communication, and different courses that go along with it. And so with that said, if there's some follow-up that we want to do and you want to chat more about them, you've got my email, and we can roll from there. So these are just a couple of examples, actually 5 examples of recent graduates that majored in communication studies. I think this provides a nice range here. And again, these are students who've graduated in the last 4 or 5 years. I could give you a full comprehensive list, but I like what we have here. Del Chucci, he's an assistant strength and conditioning coach at Illinois State in Normal, Illinois. Hannah Knutson, she's a graphic and digital designer. I don't know if it's Evereve or Evereve, but you get the general idea. That's her work in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Jen Rodriguez, she's a communications manager at Honeywell Aerospace in Phoenix, Arizona. Jack Ross, he's a graphic designer at Scholarship America in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And then Ashley Gibson is a public relations coordinator at Epic in Madison, Wisconsin. Just to speak more about Ashley there for a moment, just over I think the last 2 or 3 years, she's been on the road quite a bit. I think she's traveled to 25 states or something like that, and also some European countries, and worked with numerous healthcare organizations. If I can remember a conversation that she had with my colleagues, and then it was communicated to me, working with over 25 healthcare organizations. But yeah, what they do, and I'm just going to read this verbatim, forgive me. Ashley and her small group of implementers have been working on a project with the Johns Hopkins Medical Center for 2 years, and she will be part of a major release happening here in the spring here. I think it's supposed to happen anytime, if I'm not mistaken. To take this a little bit further, these are some other folks, 5 more folks who are doing production type of work. So for example, Nathan Blockel, he's a sports director at KILJ Radio in Mount Pleasant, Iowa. He's an on-air personality, and he's been doing that ever since he graduated. And he started with that here at Luther College, worked for KWLC, and has continued accordingly. Paige Lobdell, she's a news producer at KMSP Fox 9 in Madison, Wisconsin. Ben Jordan, he's a news reporter at KAKE-TV in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Michael Crow is a reporter at MSJ5 in Seattle, Washington, and Annalise Johnson is a multimedia journalist at KIMT News 3 in Rochester, Minnesota. So those last three folks, right, if you were to turn on KAKE-TV in Milwaukee on a random evening, more than likely you're going to see Ben Jordan on location, microphone in his hand, delivering us some news of the day, whatever it might be. Same thing with Michael Crow, same thing with Annalise Johnson. And these are folks who've put together TV news packages and like my concepts in media production class, and this is what they're doing. This is what they're working on. So quite cool. One thing I might mention with Michael there actually is that he started at Waterloo, Iowa, and then on to Knoxville, Tennessee, and now on to Seattle, Washington. So since he graduated, I want to say he's about 6 years out. Probably 6 years out. He's really kind of risen up the ranks of the television field, to put it broadly. So we've got our coursework, but other things we encourage. Internships for sure. This is just a short list of internships. Here we've got 7. KFan Radio in Minneapolis, Mayo Clinic in Rochester, KWWL in Waterloo, which I just mentioned, Target Corp in Minneapolis, Thrivent Financial in Decorah, Chicago International Children's Film Festival in Chicago, Vesterheim Museum in Decorah. And for a full comprehensive list of, not completely comprehensive, I should say, that's a bit redundant, but a good long list of internships that folks have done in communication studies you can find on our webpage, Communication Studies. Some extracurriculars, we've got folks doing numerous things. KWLC, Public Information Office, Media Relations Department, CHIPS, the college newspaper. We've got our National Communication Honor Society called Lambda Pi Eta, and also student-faculty collaborative research projects. And I've had I think 3 different students work with me on student-faculty collaborative research projects, and those have been focused on documentary film work. Speaking of documentary film, so here's where we're at. And I realized I could kind of give you a full, feel for all the films I've done, but I'm trying to keep it concentrated. And so I'm just going to mention the last 2 that I've been a part of. And with that said, I'm working on a couple right now, but they're not finished, so I'm not quite ready to share them with you. But 2015 film, Ironhead. It documents the creative work of ironmonger Kelly Ludeking and the happenings at his Down on the Farm iron pour, a yearly communal gathering of local and national artists collaborating to make cast iron art at the Ludeking family farm in Decorah, Iowa. So our team consists of myself and Neil Abbott. We were the writers, directors, editors, and this was student-faculty collaborative research project. Along with that, Brooke Joyce, composer in residence here at Luther College, did the music for the film. Aaron Lerth, who teaches graphic design, teaches photography here at Luther, he did the color grading. So I've got a bit of a team from Luther College that worked on this. And this film performed quite well on the documentary film circuit. We've got documentary film festival circuit, that is. We've got 23 festivals represented there. And I would say that the highlight was winning Best Short Documentary at the Greenwich Village Film Festival in New York City. That was back in October 2016 when we won that award. So yeah, our team feels very humbled by the success of this film. But if you want to watch it, go to Vimeo and go Vimeo/Thomas C. Johnson 9, and you will find my page, and that will take you to Ironhead. Or just simply put in Vimeo Ironhead, and you'll be able to watch it in its entirety. Its entire 9 minutes and 15 seconds. As mentioned, I do short subject pieces. My most recent film, at least the one that's finished, is Marika, and it chronicles the life of Marika Penterman, a woman born and raised in Holland who now makes award-winning Dutch Gouda or Dutch Gouda cheese at her state-of-the-art facility in Thorpe, Wisconsin. Similar team, but also worked with a student named Jack Ross. In this particular case, I was the producer, director. Jack and I edited it. Brooke did the music, and Jack did the sound production, and then the cinematography was done by Aaron Lerth, who I just mentioned. But yeah, filmed up in Thorpe, Wisconsin. I think we have 28 laurels represented here, 28 festivals represented. We're at 36 now, so again, we feel good about that. And numerous highlights, but one was winning Best Documentary at the Iowa Motion Picture Association Awards in Des Moines in April 2018. I would say a close second, actually. This film kicked off what was called the Wisconsin's Own session at the Wisconsin Film Festival back in April 2018, and it opened that Wisconsin short session. It was super fun. I was there for the Q&A, and there were like 300 people in the crowd, and to have it reach that many eyeballs in a place that is really kind of, well, it's the capital of Wisconsin, and yeah, it was great. Really had some solid feedback with that. So once again, our film team is happy and humbled by how well it's been received. And again, you could watch this film on Vimeo if you do. If you watch either one of these films, please watch in full darkness at high volume and get a feel for it. That's how you should watch films. I talk about that with my classes quite a bit. So yes, I also teach a class on documentary filmmaking. And here it is. It's Comms 358, Concepts of Media Production 2, the documentary. In the midst of that now, it's taken a little bit of a turn in terms of the production that we had planned as a result of the distance learning that we're doing now. But we're still doing some great stuff in it with documentary critiques. But in a typical semester, here's the course overview. In this course, students build on the skills of analysis, scripting, and production development developed in Comms 258, Concepts of Media Production to research, script, plan, produce, and edit their own documentary programs. Now, there's a number of objectives here. I'm not going to read that verbatim, but yeah, we look at the documentary format, we talk about it, we do some in-depth analysis, we take ideas, we build a proposal, and we pitch them to the class. And of course, we're working with cameras. We're using the language of cinema. When we're editing in the post-production realm with Adobe Creative Cloud Premiere Pro, and I should mention our Premiere Pro in the computer lab that we have in the first floor at Preuss Library, like it's top notch, it's world class. They're so snappy, they're so fast, and just like ding 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 ding. And I think that's important to have a high-powered machine when you're editing, because the last thing you want is the spinning wheel of death. The last thing you want is to have an editing program that's not reacting as quickly as you want it to be. And we don't have that problem with those computers. And we've also are quite fortunate to have some great cameras, the Panasonic AVC HD40s. We've got numerous tripods that go along with those, and all those are identical, which is important because when you pick a tripod up, you want it to be the same. When you pick a camera up, you want it to be the same. So there's some congruency there from equipment to equipment. And of course, we've got microphones, and I don't need to give you the entire laundry list of things, but yeah, we have those. In this class, yeah, we had a number of different projects created, ranging from a poetic film, Sacred, Arches and Canyonlands on national parks near Moab, Utah, to an expository film, Saving Creativity, on the importance of arts programs in public schools, to a participatory film, Disorder, on a man's struggle with obsessive compulsive disorder. And I should mention all of these have performed really well at film festivals. Whenever we think about documentary film, the question that we have to ask ourselves is about the films, like, what does it reveal to us about the world? And as viewers, how do we respond to a film as it relates to our life? Because when we watch a documentary film, the thought is that we're going to learn some sort of truth about something, that we're going to have a window into a world that we wouldn't otherwise have access to, something that might be overlooked, something that we've lost, something weird, wonderful, wacky, whatever it might be. And it could be focused on an event. It could be focused on a person, or both. We could run the whole gamut of the genres of documentary film. We could look at the different modes, and these are things that I do in my class. So again, just trying to paint some broad strokes here. But when we think about documentary films, ultimately they're concerned with issues where there's debate or discussion. Oftentimes when we watch a documentary film, something's being brought to our attention that we otherwise would not be aware of. That filmmaker has said, you know what, there's this situation, there's this happening, and I need people to know about it. They need to have an awareness of it. So it's to bring something to our attention. Along with that, it's to stand for or represent others, right? If there's a group, if there's a person who is just not able to be heard amongst the normal flow of everyday life, maybe a film can insert its voice and bring something to their attention. So those move hand in hand. But ultimately, once again, there's debate, there's discussion, and the documentary filmmaker is saying there's something that needs to be heard here. There's something that needs to be seen here. And I'm going to make this film to bring those things to our society's attention. Excuse me. When we think about documentary filmmaking, we also have to recognize, so what goes into it? And these stages here that I'm mentioning, this is what I go through each and every time I'm working on a documentary film. It's script and research, it's pre-production, production, and post-production. Now, when we think about these first two, script and research and pre-production, super important. We need to do the work on the front end before we go out in the field so we understand, all right, what's the vision for this film going to be? What shots do I need to get? What are the ideas? What are the themes that I want to bring forth? What questions do I want to ask during the production process? Because oftentimes students are like, well, I just want to start shooting. Well, it's good to have that want, no doubt about it. But we got to do some of the front end work, and what goes into that are as follows. We can talk about script and research. These are the things that my students do, and these are the things that I do. Everything ranging from a proposal to a structural outline to a treatment. I don't need to give you the details of all of these, but I will speak of the treatment. It reads very much as a graphic, picturesque essay written in the present tense, so you can feel, you can see, you can hear what this film might entail, right? It's the point in which the film is brought to life, and that comes before you put together a shooting script in pre-production. And with that shooting script, you've got interview questions that are incorporated into that, particularly if you're going to be working with a human subject on an expository mode type of piece, or there's a few other modes that we could point to there. But when we think about the documentary films that we are most familiar with, it's those that we might see in like a news magazine show, but they're not the same. Or like a National Geographic or the History Channel. They've got that feel where there's a narrator and there's people being interviewed. That's kind of what people point to when they think about this is what documentary film can be. But we can point to other modes, whether they're reflexive, participatory, poetic. Those are just 3 of the 6, in addition to expository, which is the 4th. Excuse me. So we dig into the modes, and I've had students produce documentary films in a number of those modes. Production, we're out in the field. We're working with a partner, working with someone else, and we've got the camera in hand on the tripod, and we're pushing to create good shots. We want to be shot makers, and we want to insert ourselves into the action rather than be passive observers. Some of the things I push with my students, but also when we're setting up interviews, right? We want to be aware of the rule of thirds, headroom, nose room. We want them to be in focus. We want them to be white balanced. All these different elements that go into producing high quality video that's gonna make its mark somehow, right? Whether it's posted on YouTube, posted on Vimeo, sent to film festivals, whatever it might be. There's a number of things that we can point to when we talk about the distribution and putting that film in a position in which it's going to be viewed by the folks who you want to view it. All right. Post-production includes all these different things. One of the things that I stress with my students when they've got all their footage, right? They might have like an hour of B-roll, which is the actions of a subject, the movements that they're gonna couple with the interviews, right? They might have an hour of B-roll, they might have a half-hour interview. So how are you going to organize that? And I take them through the ways in which I think it's best to organize. Everyone's kind of got their own little way of doing it. Some like to label things with colors. Some people put them in different bins. But it's important to put that out on the front end of your post-production process so you've got a feel for how things are going to go. Transcribing interviews, editing schedules, putting together an editing script, which is it's quite a bit like the shooting script, except what you're doing is you're taking that shooting script and you're morphing it in ways that are very much impacted by what you get out in the field, of course, right? And along with that comes the paper edit. But yeah, I'm starting to go down a lecture about the paper edit and editing script that might get us a little off track here. And without seeing what I'm speaking of when I talk about the paper edit, you might be just a touch confused, but that's all right. And also a rough cut and final product. I will speak to the rough cut. So when you're producing a documentary film, and let's just say you think the film's going to be 10 minutes, right? Oftentimes you'll come in with a rough cut that's going to be 12 or 13 minutes. And here's where a trial audience response is so very important. Where you've got a few different folks and there's a process that I have my students go through, and you want to get some feedback on the film. One of the things I find quite consistently with my own work as well as with other folks' work is that sometimes you just need to cut some stuff to get it a little bit tighter. And the reason for that is because as filmmakers, as editors, sometimes we have a hard time letting go of material. Like, oh, I really love it when she says this. But then when you watch it, or an outsider watches it, well, it feels like she said that like 2 or 3 times. So do you need each and every one of those? And those can be tough decisions to make as an editor, but that's why you do that trial audience response, and that's why you go from a rough cut, and then to a fine cut, and then to a final cut. So you're trying to improve each cut from the next, and make some changes that are going to make it that much stronger. And sometimes you'll dig into a 3 or 4 hour editing session, but then you got to step away and be like, all right, I just have to go for a bike ride. I have to go for a walk. I have to do something that's going to get me away from this screen, from this editing situation. And then you come back and, taking that time to reflect on the work that you're doing is important. It's not just unique to documentary filmmaking, the editing of documentary film or any other film, but also if you're writing a paper, if you're producing a presentation, taking a step away and reflecting and giving yourself a little space to be creative rather than trying to force that creativity when you're sitting in front of a screen for hours on end. But one thing I do share with my students during the post-production process is this quote from Michael Rabiger. He's the author of Directing the Documentary, a book that I have my students read some chapters from. And one of the things that he says later on in his text is this: there's a spiritual discipline to documentary filmmaking. One must set aside all the intentions one held so dear, purify one's heart of all the passions connected with the shooting, and confront the materials in a spirit of open-minded inventiveness. For nothing outside the rushes is relevant to the film you're going to make. You must find your film in the given materials, yet remain loyal to your central vision. Now, what Rabiger is talking about here is that during the script and research process and the pre-production process, you're continually developing a vision for the film that you have before you. And this comes, after you've developed a concept, an idea, and you think that it is worthy, but you're always thinking about what that film's going to look like, what it's going to sound like. But when you go out in the field, inevitably, some other things are going to emerge. So, for example, your subject might answer some interview questions in ways that you didn't expect, or just go a completely different direction where it's like, oh, this is what the film is probably going to be about. This is going to be the narrative thread that's going to take me from point A to point Z, or in other words, from the setup to the development to the resolution. That's what that's going to be. I thought it was going to be something else, but my film is starting to tell me things that I didn't expect, and you need to be open to that. And that's what he's talking about here, is that you must find your film in the given materials, yet remain loyal to your central vision. So you've still got that central vision in mind, but you've got the stuff here before you, and that's what you need to make your film out of, right? Because again, for nothing outside the rushes, when we're talking about rushes, it's the footage, it's the interview stuff, it's the B-roll stuff. It's like, here's what I have. I got an hour of B-roll, I got a half-hour interview. Let's make a short subject documentary film, and that's what we're talking about. So at this point, if we were in person, which I very much wish we were, undoubtedly, this is when we'd head on into the studio. As I mentioned a few minutes earlier, we've got the Digital Media Center in the lower level or first level of Preuss Library. And this came to fruition about 4 or 5 years ago, and it's a wonderful space for us. We've got 18 computers, 18 Macs that, again, have all the Adobe Creative Cloud, and they're fast, they're snappy. I mentioned that, but I'm going to mention it again because they're fast, they're snappy. And along with that, we have the lab where we can set things up with our lighting, we can set things up with our backdrop, we can take a look at what things look like on monitors, and I utilize that space quite a bit for teaching. Along with that, we've got our 6 of these Panasonic AVC HD40 cameras, and it works beautifully because in my concepts and media production class, pretty much always have 18 students in there, so we've got 3 cameras available. One camera available for 3 students, but it works really nice when we go out in the field and if we're trying to work on some stuff. But yeah, we're really fortunate to have some quality equipment and some quality folks to help support us in our media production endeavors, particularly our documentary filmmaking endeavors. All right, it's good to spend time with you all today. I hope you've learned some things here in this recorded lecture. Once again, my name is Thomas Johnson. I'm an Associate Professor of Communication Studies here at Luther College. You've got my email on the front end there, but I'll just re-articulate it. thomascjohnson@luther.edu. Again, thomascjohnson@luther.edu. Look forward to hearing from you, and look forward to seeing you at Luther. Take care. Bye-bye.